know me, my name is Diane Sanfilippo. I'm a certified holistic nutrition consultant and the New York Times bestselling author of Practical Paleo and the 21-Day Sugar Detox. And today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about protein. Protein is the food that I want you to grab and look for first when you're building your plate. And so the reason that I say that is protein actually tends to be one of the hardest things for us to remember to get enough of. And for folks who are used to eating paleo perhaps, or if you're eating a macros-based meal plan, or maybe you're a bodybuilder or you're doing a lot of weight training, protein is something that you focus on a lot in those worlds. But for the average person, remembering to get enough protein is not something that you might be thinking about. And what I mean by that is about a portion that's the size of the palm of your hand, that's going to be about 4 ounces, is a good amount of protein to have at pretty much every single meal. Now, the reason that I'm saying to focus on it first is that if you're out to eat, if you're traveling, if you're in an airport, finding protein is actually one of the hardest things. And it's also one of the most important because protein, though it only has 4 calories per gram, just like carbohydrates, it's actually extremely satiating. So it's extremely satiating to eat protein, and it's really hard to overeat pure protein unless it's combined with fat, or if it's combined with fat and salt. Those are things that make protein much more palatable. And so for people who are having trouble getting enough protein in, one of the reasons why is that they're trying to eat a ton of lean protein, and it's actually so much more palatable to put some salt on it and a little bit of fat. You guys know what it's like to be eating chicken wings versus chicken breast. This is stuff that is wired into us, and funny enough, my friend and mentor and colleague Rob Wolf has a new book coming out next year called Wired to Eat, where he's going to be talking a lot about this stuff, and I can't wait to bring him on the Balance Bites podcast because I have some questions for him. But I think this stuff is really interesting, the way that our appetite signaling works, the way that our brain works, the way that our hormones work in response to the different foods that we eat. And protein's one of those categories. We have 3 macronutrients: protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And protein's the one that delivers a ton of satiety without sort of this ease of overeating it. Now, you guys know, you know me, you know that I am half Italian, half German Jewish from New Jersey. So I can pretty much overeat anything. This is like, I feel like it's built into my blood that I know how to eat, I know how to cook, I know how to make food taste really good. So I can overeat pretty much anything. But when I say that, as with anyone else, you know, a plain chicken breast, you guys know it's really hard to eat. Even an entire chicken breast is about 8 or 9 ounces. It's really hard to eat that whole thing unless you season it really well or you add some fat to it, right? Because it's dry, it's not interesting. And that's what pure protein does. It's highly satiating. So I want to just clear that up for you guys. And even though protein and carbohydrates carry the same number of calories per gram, they work really differently in the body. And I'm not saying this to make you feel like carbohydrates are a bad thing to eat. It's just that the satiety that we get is really different from protein, and they all have their place. Carbohydrates have their place to help us refuel after exercise. If you're not refueling with enough carbohydrate based on what you need, you're probably going to be craving sugar, craving something because you needed those carbs. That's a video for another day, and I've actually already talked about carbohydrates before here on Facebook Live. So I just wanted to remind you that overeating protein is really tough, and some people have asked me about that. Can you overeat protein? It's hard to do it when you're eating a whole food form. It's easier to do when you start adding in things like powders and bars and shakes and all of that. The only time that protein really gets demonized in terms of nutrition, like we've heard fat and cholesterol getting demonized. I talked about cholesterol last week. We know carbohydrates are demonized all over the place. And protein really doesn't get demonized except in cases where somebody may have kidney damage already, or if somebody's experiencing iron overload. And when I say protein being demonized, I just mean usually folks are not told to eat less protein. Usually it's about reducing carbohydrates or reducing fat, right? Because those are the two that just, I mean, you combine those and that's like magic to the human palate. That is like, that's a twinkle party in your mouth. That is, once you pop, you can't stop, right? That's what fat and carbohydrates do, and salt and all that good stuff. But protein's really not a part of that picture, and so it doesn't get demonized as much, and that's totally fine. I'm not here to demonize protein whatsoever. Another big question I get a lot is about the form of protein that would be ideal. And so should you be eating just meat and seafood and eggs? Should you be getting some powders in? Should you be using collagen peptides or gelatin or whey protein or egg white protein? And is it safe for everyone, or should athletes just be using it? And really, here's the bottom line. Whole food forms of protein are ideal. The reason why collagen, peptides, and gelatin are beneficial for those of us who are not eating nose to tail anymore. I mean, as human animals, what our species evolved eating was a much broader range of what would come from the animal. Like, you wouldn't have your great-grandparents or any of your ancestors beyond that. They wouldn't be tossing the liver and, you know, every part that we think is gross, right? We have the ick factor, which I have it too sometimes, but it kind of bugs me because we're so detached from our food. We're so detached from the fact that this animal gave its life for us because we just see chicken breast packaged in a store, that we forget that eating nose to tail is actually it's more of a matter of respecting the whole animal and the fact that that animal gave its life for you so that you could have sustenance, and it's the most respectful thing you can do to eat nose to tail. And I think it's really important for us to find ways to eat these foods. That's why I include liver in my Bacon and Superfood Meatloaf in Practical Paleo 2nd edition. But what we're not getting a lot of in our diets are the amino acids that we find in gelatin and in collagen peptides. And all collagen peptides are gelatin that's further broken down. Peptides are just protein chains. It's just a chemical name for chains of proteins, but it's further broken down than what you'd get in a powder of gelatin, which means that it won't gel if you mix it into something. So we want to be getting the glycine that we can find in gelatin and in collagen peptides, but we can't get that from muscle meat. So we have to be able to get that from things like broth. And if you're going to look for the best form and the best place to get it, it is going to be from broth that you make. But we're all always looking for a shortcut, people. I know it. Don't I know it? Everybody wants a shortcut. But hey, you guys, make your broth. You don't have to drink a cup of broth to get the benefits. Make soup with it. No big deal. Just make some soup, make some stew, make braised short ribs, you know, make any recipe that calls for broth. Don't buy the stuff in a box. Make it ahead of time, freeze it, keep it in your fridge, what have you, and use something that's homemade. That's where you're gonna get the nutrition from, okay? So whole food form is always best. You're getting not just protein in the whole food form, you're getting micronutrients, you're getting minerals, you might be getting some fat. All of that actually works in synergy with the protein, with the amino acids to fuel your body in a certain way. And so, you know, vitamin A, for example, is something that actually helps protein become synthesized in the body much better. We use protein much better when there's also vitamin A present. And that's something that we're not getting when we're just having powders that are kind of broken down and highly processed. And so it's important to remember that if you're doing powders, it shouldn't be to replace meat. It should be kind of in concert with or in addition to, just like when you're taking supplements, it's kind of in addition to something that's in a whole food form. When in doubt, in terms of how to get protein in, eat the whole food form. One of the reasons why, or I would say, you know, the reason why athletes are going to take liquid, you know, powder into liquid form protein after a workout is obviously, number one, is convenience, because most athletes aren't carrying like a cut up chicken breast and sweet potato. Some are. Good for you if you are. Part of the reason why powdered protein is effective after a workout is that you're not in rest and digest mode immediately following a workout. You're still in fight or flight mode immediately following a workout, and your body cannot mechanically, physically break down protein in an appropriate way. So if you were to sit down at the gym and start chewing on some chicken breast, chances are, number one, you're probably not going to chew it really well. Number two, your body, your stomach acid is not sufficient because you're still on that workout high. You're still in fight or flight mode. Your cortisol is still kind of high. You haven't, unless you've taken about 20 to 30 minutes at least and kind of done some breathing, chilled out a bit, you're just not in a place to digest whole food. And so powdered liquid forms of protein are a lot more efficient. They're gonna bypass that whole digestive process. Now, the flip side of that, and this is something that happens with me all the time, is that for me, I don't get any satiety from a shake that's post-workout. It might be a great way to get in some quick protein. It might be a great way to replenish carbohydrates after a workout, but I don't feel as if that did anything for the fact that I was hungry. That's me personally. I know that's a lot of other people too. And if you're not getting satiety from it and you feel like you're taking in this nutrition, but it's not helping you feel satiated, then it may not be the right choice for you. So keep that in mind. In general, with protein powders, I tend to recommend only for people who really need to have them. That's my take. I feel like as human animals, we are made to eat whole food that we chew and swallow. That's what we're supposed to be doing. But I think as a supplemental form, getting in things like collagen peptides or gelatin, really helpful, but you can get that stuff through broth. You can be eating the white cartilage ends of your chicken and your chicken wings, and that's an okay way to do it too. So hopefully you guys found that interesting and informative. I'm gonna show you a few of the products that I have here. All right, so here are the collagen peptides I was talking about that I've been using. You can use any brand, and I think this is Vital Proteins. There's also Great Lakes is another one, and theirs is called hydrolyzed versus collagen peptides. Same difference, same thing. One form is going to gel in water and one will not. This one will not gel, so you can mix that into a shake and it'll be fine. It won't clump or be weird. Now, got Sophia's Survival Chews, beef jerky chews. These are grass-fed. These are made locally here, and they're awesome. This is one of my favorite brands. Crave Jerky is another brand. There's a couple of flavors. I like salt and something sweet in my jerky. If I'm gonna make my own jerky, I like it with like a little bit of maple syrup. One of my recipes is that way. Epic bars. These are good. My take on dried protein is such that it is pretty much for me emergency protein. I'm not that into it. I do like Sophia's when I want jerky, and mostly what I use these for is travel and on the go. For me, this flavor, the chicken sesame barbecue, is my favorite from Epic Bar. That's my favorite. It's super macros friendly. So for people who eat a macros based meal plan, that generally means it's got a good amount of protein and not a ton of fat and not super high in carbs. So because you're always trying to get more protein. So there's a bunch. There's beef, there's pork, there's bison, there's chicken, there's fish, there's liver, every different kind. If sugar is an important thing for you to avoid in all forms, you can totally look to avoid it. But I personally think that in a bar like this, it just makes it palatable. It doesn't usually make it sweet. It's not allowed if you're on the 21-day sugar detox, but I would not at all be concerned with some sweetener added to this. In fact, without some sweetener, I probably would think it's not gonna taste that great. This one's got some organic golden raisins as a second ingredient in this, which I think is a kind of a good idea, like a whole food form of something sweet. Here's another one. This is sardines in organic olive oil from Vital Choice. Excellent seafood brand, Vital Choice. They are a Balanced Bites podcast sponsor. And I will remind you that Balanced Bites podcast sponsors are by invitation. So we have people asking us all the time if they can come sponsor the podcast. But when I say by invitation, I mean companies whose stuff I want and can eat. But Vital Choice, amazing wild seafood. Oh, there we go. The dog thinks she's gonna go somewhere. Where are you going, doggy? Familiar places, lots of familiar places. I just dropped it. I just dropped the bar. I can see myself, but I'm looking at you over here. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll check you next week. We'll see you then. Bye.
Enrollment for the Balanced Bites Masterclass opens December 26th.
Learn more at balancedbites.com/masterclass.